Let me unmute. We are live, so you should be in your seats or at least near a Zoom room where you can see, listening in. I'm going to give you a quick demo of the pen tool. Let me get my captions, which are not wanting to go up to the other side. Okay, that's fine. No captions on the board, unfortunately. There'll be captions in the video. So we're going to start real quick with a demo of the pen tool. You guys got exposed to this briefly, just kind of indirectly through the Bezier method the other day. But I want to show you some key ideas of how the pen tool really sort of functions, as well as some vocab that'll help inform, how it works, so that it'll start to make a little bit more sense for, good morning, for assignments 6.1, 2, and project 6.3, which we'll get introduced to here in a second. So let me update attendance. I have an Illustrator. I cannot get any flipping. There we go. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to start a new blank file. You don't have to do anything crazy. You don't have to follow along. This is more me demonstrating than anything. So make sure my workspace is all good. Oh, that's not the button I wanted. Sorry. Workspace. Okay, cool. We're in Essentials Classic. Oh, dude. Hold on. I just realized my tools are disconnected, so I just got to reset. There we go. That's what we're doing. Okay, sweet. So we're all set up. Let me update attendance real quick. Sorry, it's a scatterbrained born. Okay, so here we are in Illustrator. You might be familiar with this program. The pen tool, the thing that we're going to be focusing on a majority of this time, the two main ideas of it live right here. We have the main pen tool, which is the P key on your keyboard to get there quickly. And then you also have the curvature tool, which behaves similarly to the pen tool. But we're going to start with this because it's built off of, the curvature tool is built off of this. So you have your pen tool. It's got this little fountain pen cursor icon, but specifically, there is a little asterisk on the bottom of the cursor. The asterisk is the typical sign in Adobe things that you're going to create something new. And when you use the pen tool, just like in the Bezier method, everywhere that you click is going to plot a square anchor point and then connect back to the cursor with this thing called the rubber band. I don't know if that's the official term. That's what I was told it was called. This is giving you a little preview of what your path is going to look like. And I say that term path a lot in this class because a path is a vector. Remember, that's the whole purpose of Illustrator, is paths and vectors and making shapes out of those paths and polygons and what have you. It all comes back to the pen tool. So understanding how these paths work and how they behave with the pen tool kind of lets you see through some of the magic of Illustrator and lets you start really taking full advantage of the program here. And with the pen tool, you can see that every time I move my cursor around, it's got this completely straight rubber band. That's because whenever you click once, you're going to place a straight line on your design, whatever that design may be. So clicking once gives you straight lines. And then when you hover over where you started, you notice how that anchor point has a little circle underneath it. You hover over your starting anchor point with your pen tool still selected, still rubber banded like this. That's going to complete your path and give you a polygon. So this is the shape that I've just created by just clicking and adding all these different anchor points that I can then manipulate with the direct selection tool. If you remember back to earlier units with the direct select and with shape and stuff like that, you can start to see how creating your custom polygons and editing them as you need is a really, really useful graphic design tool. But the same way that if you use the brush tool with a fill and a stroke, remember the fill is the inside, the stroke is the outside, that you can switch by hitting the X key. If you create a pen path with a fill, it's going to try and do the shortest route from the last point that you plotted, right? Kind of sticking with the the graph related, the math related sort of terminology. It's going to take the shortest point from the ending point back to the starting point like this. And if you cut it off, it's going to cut inwards. If it goes across, it's going to make a little schism. It's going to kind of reflect. You can make a whole mess of path if you just keep crossing over it, because it's just going to keep trying to find that shortest path back to the start, and it just becomes this total mess. So If you're just trying to use the pen tool as if you would use like a ballpoint pen or like a pencil, something more traditionally used for art, you want to make sure that your stroke or your fill right here is set to none. And you can always click this little red slash button, or I think it's the slash key on your keyboard to just set that fill to none. And now we're just plotting lines. So it's not going to cross back over itself. There's two ways that you can end a pen path without connecting it back to itself. You can hit the enter key, which will disconnect that rubber band. Or alternatively, you can hit the escape key, which will also disconnect that rubber band. Because we're not always going to be making polygons. Sometimes, like on the mountain logo, we make the little detail of the shadow, but we don't want to continue this path all the way back up, or we don't want it to cross over. You can just hit escape. And now you're left with this line as if you were drawing something on the pen, like as if you were drawing pen on paper. Similarly to the brush tool as well, if you have your pen path selected, you can increase how thick the line is by upping this stroke number right here. So if I make this quite a bit larger, typical is 1, it says 25 points. You can see it's going to make the line thicker. You can also change the stroke color by double clicking, the stroke color. You can change the stroke color by double clicking on the stroke color box with it selected, and that will turn your pen whatever shape you want it to be. The other thing, the part that was hardest for me to translate, thinking about using a pen with my hands versus using the pen with the computer, it's because those are two obviously very different motions in our brains. So the learning curve is a little bit strange. Speaking of curves, there's really only two types of marks that you can make with a pen tool. Why can't, oh, hold the wrong key. There we go. Those are going to be the straight lines and the contoured lines. So when you click once, it makes a straight line, but once you click and drag, you're going to notice these two handles pop out. If you think back to the Bezier method, right? These two handles are going to influence the way that your pen path curves between point A and point B. And the longer that the handles are, the more dramatic the curve is. And what helped me understand how this curve situation works is if you kind of think about it like an x-axis, right? If you imagine this is on a graph, you can also hold shift to make it snap real nice. If you think about it like an x-axis, it's sort of plotting a line from one coordinate to another, and you can see how that line is going to interact. You can also think of it like a y-axis, I suppose, just an axis of a graph, but it's going to contain the curve of the pen path, however big you make it. So you can see my starting point right here and my ending point right here. These handles, there's a key difference between anchor points and handles. If we look at our agenda for the day, anchors versus handles, right? Handles are going to have circular parts at the top of them at the end of their stick, whereas anchor points are always going to be square. So when you're trying to create a curve, it's never going to exceed, right? You can see my curve is never going to go past the full extent of my handles. You can see I make these handles as wide as I could go on the screen. The curve part is never going to extend past the end of the handle. And so you can kind of use your handles as like arrows as the way that the path is going to continue when you plot the next point. So as you can see my triangular cursor at the bottom here, because this handle is connected to my cursor, you know, my anchor point is right here. My handle is what I'm dragging out to increase the curvature of my pen. When I let go, the next path, the next step that the contour is going to try to take is going to follow the most recent handle as best it can. So you can see how the pen moves, or the curve moves from this anchor point down this handle and tries to follow this as best it can. This is an important thing to notice because this is how you can use those Alt keys to alter the shape of your curve. So you keep in mind that wherever the handle you're holding onto, you can see I'm grabbing onto the top handle here, or the left handle if we're looking at it like this. I know that when I let go of my pen tool, the line is going to continue following the handle that I'm grabbing onto. So if I change the direction of that handle by holding the Alt key, I know that the path is going to continue wherever I let go, or at least generally wherever I let go of the cursor. So I'm going to let go whenever you hold a modifier key like Shift or Alt. You always let go of the mouse first and then the key. You can see it creates this point right here where the pen goes around the corner because the path is going to continue following the handle that you let go of. So like, for example, if I folded, let me move this over here. You can also hold spacebar to move the anchor point and adjust the way that the pen tool is going to happen. I haven't let go of my mouse yet. Still holding my mouse. If I were to hold the Alt key and then also the Shift key and fold this anchor or this handle back over on top of its opposite, back over on top of its other side, and then let go of all my my mouse first and then all my modifier keys, it's going to create kind of like a, you know how they illustrate like birds in children's books? Something like this, where it just has like, it's just like an M shape. Let me turn it up. Stroke weight is super good. By folding the anchor point back over itself, you're going to get this kind of like traditional illustrative bird shape or a lot of other, you know, this is the first thing I could think of in the moment. But by manipulating your handles, those are the parts with the circles, you're going to already become creative with some interesting results here. So I'll finish up this real quick by reminding you that you go open and let me find, sorry, I was working on something for Mr. Adamo. Where is my pen tool pretest? There it is. So on goat number 1, for example, lots of curves, lots of contours, lots of opportunities for you to use the Alt key, the modifier key. And then a couple, not a couple, but one thing you should keep in mind is that you want to use as few of these anchor points as possible. The more anchor points you use, the more jagged your work is going to look. And it's just not something that we're going for. We want nice, smooth, professionally done, professionally shown off methods. So instead of clicking along each part along the horn like this, what you can do instead is think about where the curves start and stop. Where those curves start and stop, there will be an anchor point. Let me turn my fill off on these pen paths. So you can see there's an intersection right here. That's where I'll plot my first point. I can tell that the curve starts really getting dramatic. It really starts to change right about here. So what I'm going to do is instead of plotting, oops, not like that. Instead of plotting a path along each right here, I'm going to click this way and drag and get this really nice smooth line along the goat's horns here. And then knowing that my pen path is going to follow the anchor that I'm holding onto, when I let go, it should nicely connect back to the tip here. But it doesn't. So that means I need to undo and I need to adjust my handle by holding Alt. If I make it a little bit shorter, it's going to have an easier time following that curve here. And then also, I'm introduced with a problem. I need to go around a corner. So if I hold Alt, knowing that my pen path is going to follow the handle that I'm holding onto, if I hold Alt and kind of point it in the direction I need it to go, that way I can continue my path by using as few anchor points as possible. And then when I'm ready to reconnect it back to my my starting anchor point, see this handle I'm holding onto is a little long. Hold Alt, shorten that. When I'm ready to connect it back to my starting anchor point, I can still click and drag to make a curve and only use 4 anchor points to create this nice smooth horn. It's compared to using it as compared to trying to plot every single point along the way. Pen paths, you may have noticed, will only fill with solid color if they are completed polygons, if you think back to the shape tool. So you want to keep that in mind if you're going to color in your pen tool pretest. So, no, this was quite fast, but there's also, if you go to your thread from yesterday, let's see, which is here. There should be, oh, that's a Zoom. Okay. Maybe it was on 6.1. There's still that video on 6.1, which I will also put in your YouTube video. Actually, let me do it right now before I forget. I'll put in your YouTube playlist, which just gets you some more tips on how to use the pen tool and how to get used to it. This is a tool that will take some time. I can't tell what any of these are, so I will check it later. So be patient with yourself. And let's see, we're about perfect. We're about 10 minutes in. I went a little bit over. But spend about 30 or so minutes finishing up assignments 6.1 and 6.2 with your new pen tool knowledge. These are due Friday. Don't forget, Friday before break. And then we'll take a 10-minute break at 8:40 or so, 8:45 probably. And then we'll start talking about 6.3. Sound good? Any questions? All right, sweet. Thank you guys for listening. I'll do another Zoom room later today. Good luck.